Tonight, we're going to focus in on the portion of that bond that would assist and benefit the regional animal shelter that is managed by the City of Independence. So Christina Heinen, the Director of Health and Animal Services, is here tonight to give that presentation. And if there's no other questions for me, I'll go ahead and defer to her for the presentation.
Hi, Christina Heinen, Director of Health and Animal Services for the City of Independence. I'm here tonight to talk about the Regional Animal Shelter. I will real quick piggyback off of those sentiments to say, at the shelter we have a pet food pantry, we have kennels, we have all sorts of supplies. I know that we've had people reach out who have need because of the fire to have different ways of caring for their animals. We are there, please reach out. If there's a need, we will find a way to help you fill it. So the Regional Animal Shelter, the current facility is approximately 30,000 square feet. We have space for about 100 dogs and 100 cats. We have a vet clinic with a surgical space. We have 6 enclosed play yards, 2 laundry facilities on site. As was discussed, the IndeGO Bond, our portion for the public safety question will be to purchase the animal shelter. Currently, the city owns the land. The county constructed the building for approximately $5.5 million. They still owe approximately $3 million left. So the IndeGO Bond, the question would include $3 million for the purchase from the county of the building in order to essentially marry the building with the land and give us ownership over it. The staffing out at the shelter, we have about 5 staff members who work for the animal services side, animal control. We have about 14 staff members that are on the shelter side. We run pretty lean. We are a 365-day-a-year operation. We are there during the blizzard, our staff showed up. They made sure everyone got cared for and played with and the building was taken care of. We are out there every day. We've identified quite a few issues, and I talked to you guys about these issues this last fall. Those issues include the fire suppression system, artificial turf, the plumbing issues, HVAC, fencing, door closers, and roof leaks. Now, I am happy to say that the county, after the last presentation in the fall, they have started addressing some of these issues. The fire suppression system is one where there's still some work that needs to be done. Actually, in beginning of December, we actually had an issue where the fire alarm was triggered and the sprinklers were going off. The county did respond. We were able to get some immediate fixes done, but there's still work that needs to be done that was identified during the annual inspection. The turf is as old as the building. Although we do our best to maintain it and keep it clean, after a while it just does break down and start to pull away. It's detaching from the wood that's around the perimeter, and it's tearing in different places. As you can imagine, some of those dogs get out there and they play pretty rough, and they've started tearing it up some. This is an item that the county does not believe is part of the building, so they are unwilling to replace. Plumbing issues, the county has come out and started some repairs and replacement. There had been multiple leaks throughout the building, and the hot water heater was not functioning. The hot water heater is still not functioning, but my understanding is they have parts ordered and on repair, and the majority of leaks are definitely fixed. We are watching to see if a few of them are possibly need a little bit more work. The HVAC, the county did come out and they spent a lot of time working on the HVAC. This actually seems to be working currently. There was a little bit of a blip last week. They did come out promptly, and they are waiting on a part to come, but it is functioning. The fencing around the play yards is starting to rust. We go through and do our best to coat it and paint it and get it up to speed. It is still continuing to rust and probably needs to be repaired in places, and then there's some areas where for safety it would probably be better if we had a double fence system, a double gate system, in order to make sure that the dogs aren't darting in. And this is another item that the county doesn't consider as part of the building, so they do not consider it as part of their responsibility to maintain. Door closers, the county came out, they replaced a lot. They still had some that needed to be replaced. They actually replaced this last one and fixed it this last week. So it didn't make the loading of this presentation, but it did get fixed. And as of this afternoon, when I walked through, it looked like all the door closers had been fixed. Roof repairs, the county did go out. They conducted repairs. They believe, as of 2 weeks ago, that everything is now fixed and shouldn't be leaking. We have had our staff go through and replace the ceiling tiles, so that we can monitor those leaks and see if they come back. I mean, it is a blessing that we haven't had more snow, and also a little bit of a curse because I want to see if it rains. There's a possibility of rain later this week, so we will know if those leaks are still present or if they were able to fix everything. So the $3 million, although it does seem like a lot of money, in comparison, when Kansas City Pet Project was finished, using that cost per square feet, if we were to use the same amount to build, it would cost approximately $12 million to build the shelter of our size today. We know that building prices have most definitely gone up. All construction prices have gone up. And so it would probably cost substantially more to build the same sort of building today. That is my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Please proceed.
So I'm going to start with, so can you talk about why the turf and the fencing is so important in sort of the daily management of the animals?
So, as many of you know, we have approximately 100 dogs on site right now. We now have some free kennel space, but not a lot. The way we make sure that the dogs get out in order to have play groups, to potty, to do any basic functions to get out of their kennel is they are normally rotated out into a yard. So we have those 6 yards. One of them is a puppy yard that's reserved for puppies. The other 5 are for those adult dogs to be able to get out of their kennel. We need good fencing. They need to be safe. They need to be separated from other dogs. Not every dog gets along with every other dog. We need to make sure that they stay safe. We also need to be able to make sure that we can control communicable disease. So we need to be able to clean those areas on a regular basis and make sure that no one's passing parvo to anyone else or anything like that. So it's really important that we have that artificial turf that we can do that to. You can't do that to normal grass, obviously. And to make sure that that fencing is good and secure so that the dogs stay safely in. And as long as we're being honest, we're out there a little bit in the country, and we definitely have coyotes. We saw one just this last week who was hanging around. We want to make sure nothing comes in and our dogs don't go out.
And then can you talk about also why it's important with behavior and shelter stress for the animals?
Yeah. So we want to be able to get those animals out. Although we give the dogs that are there the best life we possibly can while they're there, we try to make sure they have those play groups. We still recognize that they're staying in their kennels for 23 plus hours a day. The kennels are not huge, and they do stay there for a short period of time in their life. You know, it is only about 30 days, but it is still 30 stressful days. And some of those dogs, like Bongo, that we have been there for almost 300 days. That's a long time. They need time to get out there. They need time to be able to run. We have staff who take them on walks. We have staff that, try to take them on outings, but they can't do all 100 dogs like that every single day. But it's important for those dogs to get out, and in order to make sure that they get out of the shelter safely.
And then can you talk about why it's critical that we have hot water every day?
Yes, so hot water is important, as many of you know, for essentially communicable disease control. We use that hot water not only to make sure that the kennels are cleaned well. Many cleaning products only activate well with warm or hot water. We need to be able to wash all the bedding in a manner that we make sure we're getting rid of any bacteria or diseases that might be on that bedding. Our vet staff need to be able to adequately wash their hands in between surgeries. We need to be able to do all of those things to keep not only the animals safe, but our staff safe. We want to make sure that they're not getting anything and that they're being safe.
Okay, last question. What would it mean for shelter leadership and shelter staff if it was our building? I mean, can you talk about why that's important?
So I can speak on behalf of our staff, definitely. It's important for us because when we see these issues, we recognize that the county is not in the building daily. They are not having to live daily in these conditions. Our staff are, and we feel like we don't always have control over how the building is, the environment for it, because we have to wait. Sometimes the processes for ordering parts appear to be more cumbersome on the county side. There have been times where I have offered to just put it on my P card and have them reimburse if we could just get this done quickly. It has taken, the city intervening and starting the work on the HVAC in order to get the HVAC to this point. There have been many times we've had to step in, maybe do things that aren't part of the contract in order to make sure that it is safe and it meets licensing requirements. We don't want to violate a state license. We will do everything we can to make sure that doesn't happen, and to make sure that these facilities stay safe and secure. They're for our not only our staff, but our public and the animals that we love and we spend all of this time caring for. We want to make sure that is the best environment we can.
Council member, I may add one thing. Christina did a great job framing that, but from a practical standpoint, I would hazard to guess that most of us in this room at one point in our lives were a tenant in somebody else's building or know somebody who's been in that situation. We are, in fact, a tenant in a building that's owned by the county right now. And much like if you were renting a home or an apartment from somebody, you're probably not inclined to invest your own personal funds in making improvements to a building that you don't own, because that's not a return on investment that you're going to receive. There's probably, in those circumstances, a contract where that landlord is responsible for most of those maintenance issues at the place you're renting. That is the kind of agreement we have right now at the county. But as Christina has so eloquently said, if our landlord isn't going to be willing to make these investments, we can't continue to let the animals in our care suffer as a result of that. And that's why we recommended, and I believe that's why the council has put forward this particular portion of question 1 to the voters to help address that arrangement that's not working mostly for the animals in our care.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask one more question of
Please, sure.
City Manager? I have had questions this week about Prop P and the ballot language behind that, and specifically the waterfall and how that works with the legislation, the tax that we passed. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. The original iteration of Proposition P that was passed by the voters had 2 components to that tax. The first component of that was to fund up to 30 new police officers in the Independence Police Department. And the second part of that was to fund $750,000 for the animal shelter. Both of those amounts were then set to increase each year proportional to the Midwest Consumer Price Index, or CPI. So in order to keep up with expenses like we've seen, there was a built-in mechanism in the tax to ensure those weren't stagnant amounts, but they would increase every year to keep up with inflation. The tax went on to say then that after those 2 requirements were met, that our amount to fund the 30 officers commensurate with CPI, and the $750,000 also commensurate with CPI, then voter-approved sales taxes would receive their proportional amount from online sales tax that was collected. So if you were to use the fire sales tax fund, for example, that is a half-cent sales tax. So a half-cent of every amount of the use tax that comes in above and beyond those first 2 buckets does what we call waterfall, flows into that. 1% to the general fund, so on and so forth to each of the funds proportional to that. So this year, the estimated amount for Proposition P for the police was about $4.6 million and about $893,000 for the animal shelter. We have satisfied that bucket for the animal shelter. At this, we're about halfway through the fiscal year, but we've already captured that amount for the animal shelter, which speaks to the power of online sales. And we're about $500,000 away from satisfying the full amount for the police department. So we estimate that probably beginning next month or February at the latest, then all of those funds will start to waterfall to their tax. But that is what was approved by the voters of how those taxes were set up, and to ensure then equity to all of those other taxes that were voter approved, that they receive their amount proportional to what was originally captured before online sales intensified in the economy.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Please
Mr.
proceed.
Mayor, thank you. A couple of questions. Right now, our arrangement with the Jackson County government is that in order for them to have built this building, we traded them, essentially. We take care of their animal control calls. We house the dogs that are picked up in the county in areas that are not incorporated, and we take care of those animals at our cost in exchange for using the building. Is that a fair?
Correct.
Okay. So should we take possession of the building, that would terminate that agreement, and the county would then have to pay us for the services for our animal control officers and for housing those animals. Is that fair?
If they chose to enter into a contract with us, yes.
Okay. They have options to enter into contracts with other animal control services, but if that were the case, our expenses would go down for operating the shelter for those group of animals.
Yes.
Okay. Is there any requirement, Mr. City Manager, in our purchase agreement for this building that it is purchased repaired? Meaning that if we have to take possession of it, that would mean that, just like any house, it goes through inspection and the AC has to work and the roof can't leak and et cetera. We're not buying as is.
That is our position as this municipality, that as a current landlord, the building needs to meet certain minimum conditions, just as if we were selling a home. That would be subject to inspection and probably wouldn't pass inspection if some of those minimum conditions weren't met. So that is our position, and that is one which we will stand by and advocate forcefully for.
Okay. I want to be sure to just express my gratitude to the county for catching up on some of this deferred repairs. They heard our concerns. They've come out. So, to be sure that we recognize that they're trying to be honorable partners to this city. But then my next question would be, okay, we assume control of the building. How do we then begin to make some budgetary allowances? Eventually that roof has to be replaced. Eventually that AC unit has to be replaced. Are we setting aside dollars that are dedicated to the animal shelter for us to be able to deal with long-term maintenance issues?
I haven't had a chance to visit with Ms. Heinen about her most recent iteration of the capital improvements program, but our 5-year CIP would start to account for that as being one of the assets that need to be maintained, and allocating funds proportional to that need to ensure that we do keep up with maintenance and again, make this becoming of the facility it needs to be for the animals in our care.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Anyone else have further questions? Please proceed.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. City Manager, as of now, we don't have a contract with them, correct?
That is correct.
So, in theory, they can lock that door tomorrow and we would be out of luck.
That is correct. And just to remind everybody, the city has sent numerous requests to renegotiate the contract for the last 2 years through the city attorney's office, through my office. I believe several members of the council have also reached out to your peers on the legislature. We've not succeeded in being able to schedule a meeting these last 2 years to renegotiate a contract.
It's been frustrating, but thank you for the work and persistence moving forward with that. Christina, with the HVAC and the different work that's being taken there, is that the county that's doing that in-house with their skill set, or are they contracting that out?
So we contracted it out first last year, and that work was done through the summer. The county then came and they are using in-house people at this time to fix things as they continue to break.
Is that going well?
They're-
As can be?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right. Well,
They are making an effort, and we understand that not everything can be fixed immediately, so,
sure. Well, thank you for the update.
thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please proceed.
Ms. Heinen, thanks for the update. Especially appreciate hearing that the county is making some of those repairs that had been needed. Just wondering, like on the turf and on the fence, that part, those seem to be the big items that maybe we would need to, do some work on if we were able to, get this passed and purchase it. So the question I really have on that is, how much money are we talking about? Any idea?
So on the turf, we're probably talking about 50 to 100,000, probably closer on the 100,000 side. The fencing, I don't know. Less than that, there are portions that we've been able to catch and maintain that I don't think need to be replaced anytime soon. But adding some, there are definitely some gates that need to be replaced, and a few other items that are going to be much lower cost than replacing that turf.
Okay, and so, I don't know if it's a question for you or the city manager, where would we anticipate those funds might come from at this point? Any idea?
I'm not pausing because I don't know. We have options, but I would just want to look at some of the projections for each of those funds to see what's the most responsible over a long-term period to ensure we've got a viable option without placing undue burden on any of those funds. But we have a couple of different sources that would be appropriate to utilize and probably would end up being a combination of those.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Anyone else? Please proceed.
Thanks. Just one more. Mr. City Manager, the waterfall. So $750,000 is what we have for the animal shelter. Once that's met, then it begins to waterfall after we hit the PD stuff too. Correct?
It was originally 750. Yeah, this
With the
year's
escalator.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
So we're pretty close to 900,000 now.
Okay, so we're all in there. Once that waterfall hits, that all goes back to the other departments, like you were saying, in proportional.
Yep. So the general fund gets its proportion of 1%, and then fire sales tax, the police sales tax, the park sales tax, and the stormwater sales tax.
Okay, so from the general funds, and that gets reallocated back down.
Yes, sir.
With needs during the budget
Yep.
process.
All proportional to the percentage amount that was approved by voters. So in the case of the general fund, that's a 1%, 1% general fund, and then we've added that extra quarter cent to support the police department that was approved this past August for wages. So each of the, and then quarter cent for the police sales tax, the half cent, the street sales tax. All of those get their amounts proportional to whatever was approved by the voters.
So it splits out
Yes.
quite a few different ways.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Mhm.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Other further questions? Well, thank you very much for the presentation. I appreciate
you.
it. And Mr. City Manager, thank you. So.
Sure.